Spectrum wants to hear your views. You can SMS at any time during the show. Type Spectrum, leave a space, type in your contribution and name, then send it to 7197. Your views, our interviews on Spectrum, Radio 1 FM 90.
A very warm welcome. This is Spectrum on Radio 1. My name is Edmond, Kizito, your host. Tonight on Spectrum, we are reviewing the week. Some of the issues we'll be looking at. The poll by Research World International. The people they spoke to think President Museveni should retire. Should he really throw in the hat? Sorry, like they say. We'll be looking at that. We'll look at the confusion in the East African Legislative Assembly elections. The opposition on one side. The NRM wants it all against the rules of consensus. We'll talk about that. The 1966 crisis yesterday. It was 46 days to the date since the central government head at the time, Executive Prime Minister Milton Obote, ordered central government troops to invade the palace here in Mengo and overthrow the Kabaka. He went into exile and died there 3 years later. We'll talk about that. Our guests tonight: Honorable Bernard Atiku, Member of Parliament for Ayivu County, coming from the FDC party, that's the Forum for Democratic Change. You're most welcome, Honorable Atiku.
Thank you. Good evening, listener.
We also have Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, a legal consultant at AKIJUL, also a social and political pundit. You're most welcome, Mr. Opiyo.
Thank you very much, Edmond, and good evening to all the listeners.
We're also joined by Imam Kasozi. Imam is a lecturer at the IUIU, that's the Islamic University in Uganda, and a well-known Muslim king. You're most welcome, Imam.
Thank you. Good evening, viewers and listeners.
Viewers, because we're also on the internet. You can see a video of Spectrum of YouTube. We also expect to be joined by Mr. Kintu, Nyago, Deputy Principal Private Secretary to the President. Honorable Atiku, this new poll by Research World International shows that at least 55% of Ugandans don't want President Museveni to contest in 2016. Do you think he's going to heed and not contest?
I've always, thank you very much, Edmond and colleagues. I've always held one view, which I think I'll hold until this NRM government is changed or Museveni retires by whatever means. Because if we hinge all our debates, if we hinge all our debates and arguments and strategies on Museveni, we'll never win the battle, because he has already dipped us so low, in the sense that economically you can now see evidently where Uganda is. Politically, we are the most unstable country in this region, and at the same time among what you would call the most unstable states. We call it
the failed states index?
The failed states, yeah, the failed states. Uganda is among the failed states, and yet this year we're celebrating 50 years of independence, half of which, or 50% of which, has been under the NRM regime.
More than half.
Exactly. So really, for us to begin debating Museveni, I think is underlooking the challenge, the political challenge that Uganda faces, because it is political leadership that gives strength to economic development, to social cohesion. As we talk today, socially we're not together, and yet what this government has been preaching is unity. At one time, I think it was 1996 and 2001, the manifesto of the NRM was strongly proclaiming unity, democracy and development. But today what is happening? So really, there are issues which I think we as a country must begin focusing on, and that brings the political players at the center of all this. So we are not surprised when such a report is issued or is put to the public.
Yeah, so you think it's representative? Most people think that.
It is representative.
Do you think President Museveni will retire after 30 years in power?
That has already been defied. He should have retired in 2001. He never did so. The way the term limits were amended, Article 105 was the way it was amended.
Yes.
Under dubious circumstances, that means the man does not want to retire.
Nicholas Opiyo, I would like, of course, the opposition has failed to pick up the votes that the NRM seems to be losing and the apparent loss of popularity by the president. We'll talk about that at some stage. But first of all, let's deal with this question, Nicholas. Will President Museveni retire in your view? in 2016, after 30 years at the helm?
The only person who can answer the question whether he will retire or not is himself, if not his close associates. Nobody knows for sure whether he will retire or not. But you know, if you've studied the history of President Museveni's rule, is that there's always a tendency to extend it for whatever reason, to modernize the army, to bring peace in northern Uganda, you know, to deal with constitutional amendments. So there always is going to be a reason for them to justify his continued stay in power. The argument that I see now is that nobody else can decide who a party's candidate is but that party. So that's not a new argument that I saw the Minister of Information, you know, saying on TV, that it's only the NRM that will determine its candidate. But I think the overall sense is and you see, look at it this way: Tanzania has had 3 presidents. Kenya is going into their 3rd president this year.
Yes.
The US has had, I think, over 4 or 6 presidents. We've had one man.
Since our fundamental change showed up.
One man has been in power.
Bush, Clinton,
Bush again, Obama, you know. So you see, it's
now another one.
It's a sense that
Obama too, probably.
It's a sense that he's overstayed. It's a sense that people are getting frustrated. It's a sense that there's a lack of new initiative in this government. But I think that what I think we must be discussing, I think clearly, is the question of opinion polls. I think that Uganda's democratic state is a young one. So questions of opinion polls is still a new idea. Okay? So the extent of whether opinion polls represent a trend in the entire country is still unknown. Because largely opinion polls...
Well, they've been accurate in the past.
Opinion polls that have been conducted have had a very small sample space.
Well, but they've been accurate in the past.
Once.
Afrobarometer, 68.
Once.
Go on.
You see, that one could be a coincidence. But the truth is that opinion polls are a new concept. No wonder, the president and his henchmen. I saw an article in the papers today about, I think by Daudi Mafabi, dismissing opinion polls. But you see, opinion polls are essentially a good thing. When and if we reach a stage where opinion polls now begin to shape ideas, shape governance in this country, that stage is still very far. But if we get there, I think it's going to be a good thing. And largely speaking, opinion polls that I've seen being conducted in Uganda have tended to ride on popular public sentiment. But I think that popular public sentiments, largely opinions expressed by those who have access to the media, like myself, like the Imam, like yourself, may not necessarily be in tandem with the views of the local people in the villages. For example, I think that what preoccupies the mind of a young man now in Uganda is not President Museveni. A young man wants a job. A young man wants to have a source of living. A young man wants to have access to resources. I don't think that the young men have the ability now, as we speak, to connect their unemployment to the misrule by the NRM government. Because what preoccupies them after school, what do I do? So I think that opinion polls in that sense, it's a good thing. I think we can develop that a bit further so that they reflect, I think, the true sample space of the entire country. Because
they should be bigger, you think?
Bigger, countrywide. And see, opinion polls become meaningless if you don't consistently follow through and see change of trend. Because trend is what you must measure.
You have the mapping mechanism.
Exactly.
And effort.
It's what you must measure. It's a consistent thing. I mean, the Gallup polls in the US is a consistent thing. After every 2 weeks, there's a poll. And it has a larger sample space. So it's a good thing. But I do agree on the whole general fact that I think that the baton has to pass to the next generation.
You think so?
I was born in 1980, Edmond. I have seen no other president in my adult life than President Museveni. I think we need to give space for the rest to play the part, to play the role they should play in that generation. Our generation's time is going to pass. In fact, we're going to be an idle generation if we allow these guys to continue. I think the page must turn. The people of this country must begin to give a role to the youth, begin to give a role to what Norbert Mao called an under-40 group.
The UB40, like you said.
Yes. So I think that President Museveni's time is in my view, long gone. He needs to leave the stage and give the opportunity and pass the baton. In any case, if he cannot leave because there's no one to take over, it's an indictment on his leadership.
Well, in management, there's a saying that success without a successor is actually a failure.
A huge failure, I should say.
Imam Kasozi,
Yes.
should the president hang up his hat? Or boots like this? He wears military boots sometimes. Go.
Thank you very much. You see, it is really very interesting when we begin to discuss this issue, and especially if you peg it to independence. I have tried to analyze the political history of independent Uganda. If Uganda is independent, I still ask my question, are we independent? In what, for example? President Museveni has been in power for 27 years. He has
26 years,
25 years and 14 years of disturbance. He was 14 years he spent them disturbing Uganda, 27 ruling Uganda, and therefore for any shortfall that we have, he has the biggest contribution by all standards.
He worked in President's office in 1970.
Because
went to Tanzania in exile,
because the results of his wars are still a living example to many of our populations. If you don't move around in this country, you may not easily know. If you come to Kampala, then you can celebrate, because in Kampala we have so many tall buildings, we have so many people engaged in a petty trade called business. In most of the so-called, because largely people who I am in the printing service, and people who come to print business cards, for example, that they are businessmen and businesswomen. No, when I look at them, they are not business.
What are they doing?
They are brokers. Many of them are brokers. Many of them are just middlemen and women. Many of them are vendors, and they call themselves. That's why we have an argument. Somebody is vending on the street, and they're saying they are removing businessmen from. A business person is not shown where to go and operate from. He's not trying to go to the market. He knows where the market is. Okay. So, but vendors, brokers, middlemen, hawkers can be put across. So, I think it is time. To me, I am asking His Excellency the President to offer Uganda a good an anniversary gift at 50 years of independence by saying, I have done my best. I have contributed to the growth of this country to some extent, and I have for 41 years in real management, because in the bush he was managing, in Tanzania he was managing, in Mozambique he was managing, because very would be good brains of this country. He took them down there and we missed them. So that's why I'm saying 14 years of disturbance, 27 years of leadership, but if you go up country, you reply. I was in the north last week distributing mosquito nets in Dokoro district.
Some of them use them to trap.
I was surprised. You see, I was surprised in some of these villages. So because I passed through Dokoro, I went to Oyam. From Oyam, I went to this is the district that connects West Nile to I don't know the Porongo. I passed through Porongo and the national park, through Masindi and then reached. If you pass in all those roads and come back, and after taxing me, for example, they taxed me as I was entering the park, 10,000 because I was a Ugandan, 30,000 for my car, and my guests, each of them 91,000. But when you see inside, many things are missing. Therefore, it means there is something.
There's no golf course.
So that's why we think the president should not a soft landing, but let him give Uganda an independence gift by saying,
in this jubilee year.
2016, I'm not coming back,
Well.
and then he can really also help NRM grow.
All right. Well, listeners, this is Spectrum on Radio 1. Tonight we're reviewing the week. We're talking about the Research World International poll, which shows most people polled say President Museveni should retire. He's ruled this country for 26 years. He would have run the country for 30 years at the end of his current term. Our guests tonight, Honorable Bernard Atiku, Ayivu County MP coming from the Forum for Democratic Change Party, Mr. Kintu Nyago, Deputy Principal Private Secretary. The President has just joined us. Mr. Opiyo, legal consultant at AKIJUL and social and political analyst, and Imam Kasozi, lecturer at IUIU. Mr. Kintu Nyago, will President Museveni say 4 years from now, I have run the race, I've fought the good fight, I'm going home?
That question can be determined. Mr. Museveni is going home after elections or before election. Can be determined, broadly speaking, by three parties. One, the sovereign, who are not, some possibly disillusioned pollsters who, whatever agenda, come up with, harebrained results. But the sovereigns are the Ugandan people who are listening to this show, and who are the ordinary people as the Constitution decides. Secondly, Mr. Museveni himself, he may decide not to stand. That's his democratic right. But thirdly so, and also equally important, is the party. Now, regarding the polls, I don't take these polls seriously. One of the most, the first major poll that was taken in the world was in 1952 in the United States, and when there were elections. When President Roosevelt died in office, his vice president was called Truman, was standing for the first time, Harry Truman. Now, the pollsters said that Mr. Truman was going to lose dismally. That the Democrats, Mr. Truman is going to lose dismally.
60 years ago.
Oh yeah. It's that old. This fraud in that is depicted as intellectualism. And the Republicans began celebrating that Mr. Dewey, the one that's called Dewey, was going to win.
Thomas Dewey or something.
Yeah, I think Thomas Dewey. And then Truman won. When the voters went to the polls, Truman won and was president. Till
so from that time on, you don't take them seriously.
And then also, these are not gospel truth. But people tend to cite them as if they are Quran truth or gospel truth. Far from that. All these are subjective. To begin with, what's the quality of the people who are conducting these?
Dr. Wakeda is a reputable researcher. You can't doubt
reputable to who? That's first. Then secondly, who did he? What is the sample size? For example, in the Dewey Truman poll,
yes,
the people who conducted these polls had a Republican bias, and they basically polled people who were in the middle class, who had, say, telephones.
Right.
And then in America, of those days, most Americans did have telephones.
Yes.
So they only interviewed Republicans.
Right.
And as a result, Mr. Dewey had 70% win. But when the results came, they were different. So
modern day person, you have
your chance to speak. You have your chance to speak. So what is the sample size? What's the representative of the sample and so forth? But then that said, some other issues have been mentioned, like by my brother Mr. Ayivu. Mr. Ayivu said that Uganda is a failed state. Well, how fortunate for him. In a failed state, he earns 20 million shillings per month.
Yeah.
Can you imagine? 20 million in a failed state. I think we should become much more rigorous in the terms of our analysis. How can you? Because he's one of the youngest people in Parliament to begin with, and that's very unusual. Both in the world, I look at CNN and I see people in American Congress. They are basically white old men. You see, white old men.
What's in the world?
Well, you could put it that way. But look at Yala, the people who come here from other countries. They are basically old men. But Uganda has one of the youngest and most dynamic parliaments.
Average age is 43.
Many of these guys have hardly done anything for a living, apart from going to parliament for the first time. I'm not saying him, but quite a few of them. You see? So, look, and then they call this a first, and they earn a very healthy living. And
you made it very, very
There are a number of things, like, for example, many educators have done very well. Let's take education.
Yes.
And I'll just look at my brethren of the Islamic whatever faith.
Yes.
They have really been liberated with education. Let's take Yumbe.
Yes, in West
Yumbe was basically illiterate because missionary education marginalized them. There's a parish called Lodongo or something like that. It marginalized them because it wanted to forcefully convert them. And they refused.
Into Christianity.
They refused.
Yes.
And it's UPE that has liberated those people. Let's take the IUIU and the fact that it's creating a middle class,
the Islamic University.
Oh yes,
yes,
middle class, educated Islamic, population.
Okay, I think the point has been made.
Oh yeah, I think
the issue of retirement should be shelved.
And then leave that to the Ugandans.
All right.
To decide. That's what democracy is all about. Leave that to the party.
All right.
And leave that to Mr. Museveni himself.
I'd like us to move forward. You mentioned something if you feel, because very briefly, before you talk or you do that, I'd like us to talk about the names that were brought up. Rebecca Kadaga, Janet Museveni, the name of Museveni's name comes up again. Gilbert Bukenya, Mama Mbabazi, Salim Saleh. Who do you think would take it? Let's talk about those people.
I think, just to answer the question straight, I think if there's anybody in NRM that's going to give the opposition a run for their money, it's going to be Rebecca Kadaga. I'm speaking this as somebody who has been observing her, and we're taking her as a serious challenger, and hopefully the NRM will endorse her to replace.
You might cross it.
Because I'm very sure if such a quality of woman comes up to challenge or to offer leadership, and we will not expect the kind of harassment that has been seen on our streets during campaigns and what have you. But just one thing that I'm requesting through you to put across to my brother Kintu. He has said I'm among the youngest, and he's looking at the kind of leadership in the, first of all, in the East African region and world over. If I'm to ask him, what is Uganda's life expectancy?
Yes.
Uganda's yeah, exactly. What is... No, we don't need to answer. It's a straightforward question. What percentage of the current population of the 32 million youths constitute? And what is... UP is not a Ugandan affair. UP is a global thing. That's why the Millennium Development Goals apply across the developing world. And therefore, when you compare the quality of UPE in Uganda and other countries that are implementing it, just Rwanda here, our neighbors here.
You want to say something?
You can see why. First of all, to put his point to rest.
Yes.
It's not me who authored or who put Uganda among the failed states. There are very many reports that have been produced, and if Mr. Kintu is to read this literature,
I'm sure those reports
he should be able to qualify and understand why.
To begin with, such reports could be sponsored by the FDC, and then the results are self-fulfilled prophecy. I mean, the results are what the sponsor wants. Now, regarding life expectancy, it has improved tremendously. I think it's about now 50-something for women, 55-something for women, and I think 52 for men. And that's not so bad. I mean, long time ago, I mean, many years ago, I mean, or a few years ago, you find that life expectancy was 35 or something. But now it's...
And how old are you now?
All right, this is Spectrum Radio. I want to go for a break.
You're not even qualified to contest for parliament because statistically...
Hear the voices and the sounds of Africa. One love, one spirit, one heart in Africa. See the beautiful sunset of Africa. Celebrate Africa with one rate, one Africa from Airtel. Call across all Africa at a flat rate of only 10 shillings per second. That's right, 10 shillings per second all day, all night. And stand a chance to win a fully paid trip for two to Mombasa every week. Another reason to celebrate Africa in proud association with Fly 540 Airlines and Serena Hotels. Terms and conditions apply. Airtel. John, Mike and I, we go back a bit. We knew John at the beginning, working for someone else. But he was different. He had vision, saw opportunities. He started working towards his goal, opened his own garage, and worked, learning the hard way. His reputation spread. Trust, consistency, quality. Soon people were coming to him from all parts. He made himself and his whole street prosper, and also helped friends, seeing potential in people and helping them on. But John never shouts about all his success. He's just who he is. Special.
So here's to men like John,
who make a difference, who enjoy Nile Special, the rich, satisfying taste from the source. Nile Special, you've earned it. Not for sale to persons under 18.
Spectrum on Radio 1 FM 90.
Welcome back on Spectrum. Tonight we're reviewing the week, talking about the research findings that show President Museveni really should retire. The East African Legislative Assembly will talk about that, and the 1966 crisis, 46 years ago to the day yesterday, when central government troops invaded the Lubi or the Kabaka's palace. Our guests tonight, Honorable Bernard Atiku, Member of Parliament for Ayivu County in the West Nile, comes from the FDC party. Mr. Kintu Nyago, Deputy Principal Private Secretary to the President, Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, Legal Consultant at AKIJUL and an analyst. Imam Kasozi, lecturer at IUIU, well-known Muslim cleric. Nicholas, let's look at this list again. Rebecca Kadaga, Janet Museveni, the name comes up again. Gilbert Bukenya, Mama Salim Saleh. Is that a credible list?
Well, you see, whether it's a credible list or not, I do not know, but I know that these are the common names on the minds of people in this country. If you're talking about governance, they are the people who have occupied space, and so their names are always going to come up. Now, whether they are good leaders or not, it's a different matter altogether. All of these guys have been around for some time. We've known them. We know who they are. My proposition is that if Uganda is supposed to turn the page, because I think we need to turn the page. We've been on this page for far too long. If Ugandans are to turn the page, we need a new beginning. We need new lots of people who are devoid of this divide that has been in this country for long. You can hear the debate. Divide. What do you mean by divide? You can hear the debate between Kintu and Honorable Atiku. That debate is a debate that will never have a middle position. It's a debate of people who are holed up in their corners and all shooting at the other. And I think that this kind of animosity, this kind of unfriendliness, doesn't augur well for the future of this country. I think that if we need to move this country forward, and we need to turn this page, we've got to get people who I think who are a fresh beginning, and all this dead wood must be put in there.
That's a very strong word.
Yes.
You're sounding political tonight. Yes. Nicholas Opiyo, we still want to believe you're a neutral political analyst. Talk to us about the opposition failing to take up the space the NRM has lost. The poll research show, the poll findings show that even though the NRM has lost popularity, Museveni has lost more than the NRM, but the opposition has failed to bridge their gap. They raised their popularity from 26 to 29%, which is a thin growth, when the NRM has lost by over 14 percentage points. How do they?
Well, just to justify my deadwood proposal, I think that generation's time, they're in the evening of their lives, and they've got to go and give way.
Well, the Constitution gives them a right to still stand.
They do, but my opinion is that let's give the new sun to rise.
All right.
Now, back to the opposition. The opposition, for all intents and purposes, are a very disorganized lot. My view is that it even makes it plausible to think that they are not ready to take over government, because they do not demonstrate, in my view, an alternative, a credible alternative. I do think that the opposition as we have in Uganda today is just a collection of people who want their share of the spoil, and I'm see, with all due respect, my own brother is the president of a party. I think that the entire process, the entire process, in my view, represents people who want to take a part of the pie and go away. I don't think any of them put this country above self.
All right.
And in my view, I think they make the argument that they are unprepared even more plausible.
So the NRM should continue.
And what happens
under the current circumstances?
What happens in Parliament is a demonstration of that disorganization.
What are you going to do for us? Because it seems you're still stuck with us, the NRM.
No, to begin with, my having a difference of opinion with my brother, my younger brother, Mr. Ayivu, does not make me his enemy.
Sure.
Yes. So the enemy of the state.
Or Imam, Sheikh Kasozi, we are the best of friends. So, Mr. Opiyo, please, you should understand what democracy is all about. And in fact, you being a lawyer should appreciate this even better, because in the courts of law, put two lawyers together, they won't have the same view, but that doesn't make them enemies. So, Mr. Opiyo, please, you should not confuse our listeners. Now, that said, age has nothing to do with dead wood. We have seen very many old men in the prime of their lives, in the evenings of their lives, who have transformed their societies. Let's take Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini. He was 90 or he was 80 something when he led the Iranian Revolution, and Iran has never been the same again. It has never been an underdog to anybody's interests apart from the interests of the Iranian people, the proud Persian people with a very old heritage.
Age is but a number.
Mr. Nelson Mandela,
Holy Sasa, man.
Oh yes. Mr. Mandela was, I think, 80-something when he came to power, and for sure
For
you
5
cannot
years.
compare Mr. Mandela's legacy to that of the white people who ruled and subjugated the black people in that
like a pastor.
Right.
Oh yes, I mean, I
Preaching the gospel of the
so
NRM.
clearly, age has nothing to do with ability. Age has nothing to do with
Age is but a number. You can
7 is far from being old.
I like the pastor.
Mr. 7 is far from being old, and is still
energetic.
agile.
Still walks with a spring in his step. Age is but a number. You can still die there. Let's move forward. Let's talk about the confusion in the South African Legislative Assembly. Imam Kasozi, the NRM is playing intransigent. They insist on having the majority seats and denying all the other people.
Before I come to that, I think the opposition in this country is being given a raw deal and an unfair treatment, unless they have made some contribution. For us, for example,
colorful posters at election.
Let me tell you, in 1996, when real opposition to President Museveni, apart from the ongoing then Konye War, okay, it was like a dream.
Paul Samogere got 22%.
Muhammad by that time, all these big wigs whom you see now coming to opposition were with President Museveni. He was their darling. So if we have managed, because me I belong to opposition, if we have managed to bring down, to at least to cause refugee, Bijandi Sali, Amanya Mshega, Mugisha Muntu, the Mate, Winnie Yanyuma, the reasoners of this world, to depart from Mr. Museveni, it means something, some work is being done. The only problem
isn't the departure.
The only problem is that when these people come out, they want to look for positions again. Actually,
what should they do? What would like that?
They should come and follow, because they have been at the head of the party, and they should follow. If they were following, we would really have a better and a more organized. But because they are opportunistic, the majority of them, we cannot move further than we are. But I think we are moving.
Imam, just two things. Yes. I think that the departure of people from the NRM wasn't about the opposition, rather it was the internal dynamics in the NRM. But also, secondly, the fact that they've come and occupied your space speaks a lot about what you've been doing in that space.
Yes. Okay.
You know.
All right, let's go forward. We might not be able to.
So it's African confusion. I think normal justice, to me, I have said it and I want to say it again, that sincerely speaking, the judgment seems to be confusing Ugandans more. And I have had different lawyers with different legal opinions. But the intention of those people making the argument, I think they had a point. To me, if I was the NRM, or if I was a member of parliament and I had a say amongst them,
how would you do it?
Number one, I would first of all people who are below 40 years of age should not go to East Africa.
Right.
What experience are they taking to East Africa? What are they going to do for us there? If people like Professor Mzee of Kenya stands up to talk, how many of these younger Ugandans will stand? They will not. They will be intimidated. The second thing, so the first 6 positions, for example, should have gone as it is assumed.
NRM.
Not
assumed as per law.
Per law. Each of the parties that is represented in the
because there are 6 parties.
Then the 3 remaining ones, then they could be voted for. And then the might of the NRM, as they put it,
they can
then
get
could
another
come
2.
there and then they have 4 people.
Another one.
It would have made some reasonable decision. And I want also to advise the political parties, the different political parties. It is not all about the politicians within our parties that we should send to East Africa. We must look for retired people, retired headmasters, retired administrators to be sent to this East Africa so that they organize
you cannot be
the future of these young men who want it now. I know the Baganda have a saying that younger men, that younger trees are
they strengthen the forest.
The forest. It actually means that the younger trees are the forest itself, because the others are about to be cut.
All right, Honorable Atiku, you share a name with the Nigerian former head of state. Talk to us about this East African Legislative Assembly. How would you want it to be done?
Really,
your way.
There's no another way apart from what the treaty spells, Article 50. And if really we are to live within the legal provisions, which I know is a very big challenge, even within our country here, we have had to do some acrobatics to amend and do funny things in order to bend the law to suit our interests. And that is exactly what we are trying to portray in the East African Legislative Assembly. You saw recently one of the contestants, Honorable Leader Wanyoto, with due respect.
She wanted the third term. Only one more term.
I mean, but the law is clear. You are given five 2 terms. 5 year 2 terms.
Yes.
And she had already had 10 years in the East African Legislative Assembly. So there was really no vision was not exhausted. So really, Edmond and the listener, I want to say there's nothing other than following what the law spells.
How should it be done?
The law says
political party representation.
All the various political parties, not shades even, political parties
and shades in the same
represented in the national assemblies.
Yes.
And
different political
shades.
Yes.
And other interest groups. So really, if you are to begin interpreting the various political parties, how many parties are?
6 of them.
6 of them. JEMA, UPC, DP, FDC, NRM, and CP. So really, out of the 9 slots, it is more than feasible. Because there's a letter which says feasible, feasibility.
It's already
as far as feasible, and it's already feasible for
each take
Ugandan Parliament to first put the 6 and say FDC, go and have your elections and give us one candidate. Right. As really Imam has said, the 3 is what really should have.
They split between NRM and FDC.
Not only splitting, they should have now been competed for. And that is where NRM should have brought its numerical strength. So really,
to begin with, I find this very interesting.
Yes.
But I'll begin by saying that the confusion you mentioned, I was fortunate to be there during the NRM's primaries. There was no confusion there. I think they were very consistent and they were following.
It was not like the one in Nambole.
But in the FDC there's confusion. I mean the opposition.
I'm not saying that. Well, possibly, I won't make my comments there, but there was no confusion. And also, they were following both the national constitution and were following their own constitution, whatever. Now, to begin with, we are all aware that the NRM under President Museveni fought for and have established democracy, not mobocracy.
Yes.
Mobocracy.
There is a
There's a difference between mobocracy and democracy.
Go on.
The NRM fought, Mr. Museveni and the NRM fought for and established democracy in Uganda.
Yes.
The constitution of Uganda is clear. I don't know about treaties being mentioned, but the constitution of Uganda is clear. It says that Uganda has to be governed under a democratic dispensation.
Let's talk about Yella.
That is how it is. In the NRM, those elections were conducted democratically.
Yeah, but why take
now, secondly, when you talk about all parties being represented, so is this by appointment or is this by democratic mandate? So,
well, but Mr. Nyago, let's be fair. Let's get the spirit of this.
Yes.
Let's get the spirit of
what
this.
Spirit is there?
Tanzania has a 45 million strong population. They have 9 MPs. Rwanda has 9 million people. They have 9 MPs.
Burundi?
I've not even gone to Burundi. They all have 9. So why should NRM take this over?
Why should the NRM do what?
Employ its numerical strength. TZ would have said we want 45 MPs. Rwanda gives us 9.
Look,
it's not about numbers, obviously.
I'm not an expert on Tanzanian law. I'm not an
expert. This is African Legislative Assembly treaty.
But that's it. I mean, this is anchored. In let me finish my point. This is anchored in a given setting, and the setting is Uganda. And in Uganda, what Mr. Museveni rules democratically, what Mr. Museveni and the NRM fought for and have established is democracy. The constitution we have, which I'm very proud to mention, is one of the very best in the world. Is one of the very best in the world. Dictates or points out that the only way you can govern in Uganda is through democratic methods. Now, what we can do is this. Let us amend the constitution. Let us amend the constitution. And we say that now to go to parliament, we can amend the to get the positions, to use appointments. No, we should have a referendum on that. Let's have a referendum to amend the constitution, that tenant, that provision that says that to govern in Uganda to get any governance position, it must be done democratically. And then we say that you do that through appointing somebody you like or whatever.
Okay, Nicholas.
Yeah. So we do that.
How should it have been done? The NRM is deploying its numbers, 6 MPs. That's preposterous, some people have said.
Well, you see, if you look at the practice in the region, perhaps you understand why the NRM is behaving the way they do. Because in Rwanda, for example, the ruling party took the larger part. In fact, they returned all but one of their reps in Arusha. Burundi did the same thing. Tanzania did the same thing. In fact, in Tanzania, the leading opposition party didn't even get a slot. So if you look at the...
Actually, they just say back to Tanzania. So the system and the opposition.
Yeah, but you see, if you look at the practice in the region, you see that the NRM is actually just trying to follow the trend in the region.
Right.
But that doesn't make it right. Because I think that we need to very quickly understand the purpose of the assembly.
Yes.
The purpose of the assembly is not to represent parties.
Yes.
But to represent countries. Because if you're going to Yala, you're not going to represent the NRM party or the DP or the FTC. You are a Ugandan ambassador in that assembly. You will speak for and on behalf of Uganda, not the NRM, not the FDC, not the DP or any other party. So the concept, first and foremost, is that these guys who go to Arusha go on behalf of Uganda. Now, when you begin to treat it that way and look at that alongside Article 50 of the treaty, you then begin to appreciate the need for a cross representation, not just for the leading party, because the treaty is very clear that members of Yala will be elected from national assemblies and represent all parties in parliament
and political shades,
gender, shades of opinion, and any other group. So the consideration should not be numerical strength. Numerical strength doesn't count.
Right.
The treaty spirit is very clear.
Okay.
Every country is supposed to represent the entire broad opinion in that country.
Okay.
Yeah.
Imam Kasozi, let's hear from Imam.
No, you see, sincerely speaking, in social science,
very briefly, I like us to move forward.
In social science, we don't look for what is the most correct answer.
Yes.
We look for what is relevant. So, if the statute of East African Community is saying each political or different shade should come in, then we should not mind. First of all, that's why I'm not specifically, even Jema could bring a person who is not even Jema, as long as he has the qualities I'm talking about. Okay. Because for me, I'm not about these people just to go because they want to go and fill positions and buy this big, and yes, drive these big cars and whatever. That's what is attracting most of our people. And it's a danger.
Let's talk about 1966. Yesterday it was 46 years since the Ruviri was invaded.
Yes.
Do you think the roots, some people have said it was the beginning of the militarization of conflict in Uganda. Do you think the roots are dead of such conflict?
They are not. Otherwise, if they were not, because even today we are still thinking of rebellion, we are still thinking of going to the bush, including the leader himself. He sometimes talks about it, that if I'm done this, I will go back to the bush. Yeah. Meaning that we are still elementary, and if we are in an elementary group or in a rudimentary manner,
yes,
that is where you are. So we have very little. We have not been exposed enough. We have little civic education. We don't know. We don't visualize what should be our country. How it should be like.
We have a vision. The man I know.
I'm telling you, if we would be concentrating on agriculture and would be far ahead in this world.
But as a politics cooled, we can't have
politics is not about cool, because it is opportunism. We don't have politicians in this country. We have opportunistic
people. Nationalists, statesmen.
It's just opportunism. People, the survivors, people are saying, where is my today's food? Until you jump to that stage, don't expect. So the 1966 crisis, it was very unfortunate, first of all, and two, but our people have lived in its nightmare for so long.
Right.
We need to overcome that stage, especially by demonizing some of the people who were involved at that time. We must stop demonizing them because, for example, I want to give a clear example.
Yes.
Buganda is the main character. And on the other side, Obote. But Obote is trained to Buganda as a Muko. He has married here. His children are nephews of the Baganda. And therefore, there is no way you can consistently say, dismiss that forever, because there is no way. So I want to say, we must get out of that nightmare and that hangover, and then we become real for a better Uganda.
Thank you. I think the point is very clear. The truth is that Buganda still remains a very instrumental institution.
Is it a motive?
In the affairs of...
Is it an emotive thing? Well, that's what we're dissecting.
Exactly. Which we cannot dismiss in the event of the development of this country, in the democracy of this country, and all aspects of leadership. And I want to say it is unfortunate that yesterday, as we were celebrating or remembering this day, the 1966 crisis, we were recounting of recent what was seen at that time in the current political setting, and I think that is what we need to look at. And I'm sure the 1995 Constitution tried to address one of the causes, federalism.
Yes. Oh, you think we should have a federal system?
Wow, what a beautiful system of governance.
Yes.
And I think it's not a manifesto, but the Constitution provides this as one of the forms of governance, which I think we need to explore, because Buganda still, the Buganda region, much as there's a kingdom or a monarchy in place, but the people still feel strong for that system of governance. And I'm sure we in West Nile would support this move.
Mr. Nyago, you have a burning point. Let's hear it. Federalism.
I'm not for federal.
Oh,
yes,
is that so?
311. My mother's Muganda.
What will you tell the king when you meet with him someday?
That's a different matter. But that's it. The roots of
federal or federal system of governance.
Go on. But even federalism is something which is neither here nor there. Now, but look, the roots of the crisis we are talking about were based in colonialism. Now, the unfortunate thing is that those roots of conflict were consolidated in the 1962 Constitution, which was authored by mainly three parties: the colonialists themselves, the UPC, and those who represent the Buganda, who became KY. They were not yet KY, but they became KY soon after. Now, the writing even then was on the wall. Ben Tuanka, in fact, moved out of that constitution. He was a very wise man. And in 1961, when this constitution was being made, a very clever person, most cerebral person, Bishop Dr. Joseph Chiwanuka, spelled this out very clearly in his pastoral letter of 1961.
Yes.
About the problems that this constitution was going to cause. It was entrenching tribalism, it was entrenching the Kabaka's role in politics when they're not supposed to, in a republic and so forth. These things were clear even in 61 to Bishop Chiwanuka. And this pastoral letter was read throughout to the faithful throughout the country.
I've seen a copy lately.
Oh yes, oh yes. Now, that's it. Regarding the situation, because for example the constitution entrenched religion, entrenched tribe, and disenfranchised the people of Uganda, who could not have the vote, who could not vote for their members of parliament to go to parliament. It was the Mengo Chico that was appointing whatever, and it was only appointing KY. Now that said, the NRM under President Museveni has clearly done a lot to heal that trauma, that problem. In the 95 Constitution, for example, take the current governance situation we have. We have not just young men like Mr. Ayivu, who is very capable, but we have all tribes, all religions, women, and so forth. I mean, very democratic. We are not the best. If you want perfection, you can go to heaven. But within the confines of the constraints of this world, under the 95 Constitution, and the able leader of President Museveni, who believes in this constitution, who was a key author of this constitution, and who has had the political will to implement this constitution. Uganda has gone a long way to heal many of those problems.
If I can make my pitch in just 2 sentences. First of all, I'm glad that you're now appreciating the wisdom in pastoral letters. I hope that you will relay the message to the pastoral letters have wisdom in them. But I think that the sooner Buganda begins to realize that its own survival depends on being part of Uganda. But I think Buganda's problem is that it does seem to look at itself as a different entity. I think its only survival, it can only survive a similar event of 1966 if they begin to look at themselves as part of the entity called Uganda. Short of that, Buganda's position will always remain precarious.
But Nicholas,
that is my wise counsel.
But Nicholas, the Constitution provides for the federal system, which I think the government could explore, because really, if it is where the Baganda feel comfortable, why not?
Even if you're exploring a federal system of governance,
Which Baganda?
in Buganda alone,
Yes.
then there's no true Buganda now anymore, because the entire Buganda, in fact, there are more than Buganda in Buganda.
All right.
So a federal system of governance may not deliver a Buganda government.
But something called Buganda.
Yes.
Actually, why people confused? They think Buganda was a tribe.
Right. To the nation.
Buganda
With an assimilation policy.
It started and it grew beyond the tribe, and it became a chiefdom, and then it became a kingdom. It was actually at the verge of becoming a state.
We have to go. Thank you very much. It was a nation started legislature, executive, and education. We have to go. Thank you very much, dear guest, Honorable Bernard Atiku, Ayivu County MP from the FDC. Thank you for coming to Spectrum. Mr. Nyago, Deputy Principal Private Secretary to the President, Mr. Nicholas Opiyo, Legal Consultant at AKIJUL, and our analyst here in Neutral, and Imam Kasozi, lecturer at IUIU. Thank you for tuning in. I've been your host, Edmond.
You can pay, you can buy, pay your bills, pay school fees, send cash over